Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for your incredible support. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to stay updated. Now, let's delve into our story. Until a giant person appeared in the sky. Yun-song, the elder of the inner hall of the Five Elements Sacred Land, announced himself as the examiner for the admission exam. He instructed aspiring cultivators to head to the eastern part of the city at noon to register for the disciple evaluation test, their gateway to entering the sacred land. Excited by the opportunity, everyone hurried to register upon hearing the announcement. Lu approached the protagonist and declared his intention to participate. Encouraging Lu to give his best, the protagonist assured him of waiting. The protagonist's companion, the big guy, expressed regret for being unable to protect them presently but advised hiding if fear struck, believing they might not meet again. Undeterred, the protagonist, holding the Celestial Ascension Order, held hope of a reunion with Lu soon. At the martial arts arena on the eastern side, candidates lined up for registration. Noticing the protagonist ahead, Tang and Ming were surprised to see them planning to take the admission exam. Tang queried about the protagonist's intentions, while Ming impatiently inquired when the prince planned to settle scores with Yifan. The prince assured her to focus on their current tasks and promised that once they became official disciples of the Five Elements Sacred Land sect, they would avenge their past humiliations with Yifan's life. Finally, it was Yifan's turn to introduce himself as a cultivator in the blood transfusion realm. Observing from behind, Tang doubted the protagonist's suitability for the competition, given his status in the blood transfusion realm. He expressed concern that even if the protagonist passed, he might struggle to remain safe amidst other participants. Meanwhile, the protagonist proudly displayed the Celestial Ascension Order, a gesture that was instantly recognized by those present. With a smile, the observer declared the protagonist exempt from the examination and instructed Yifan to step aside briefly. This revelation stunned Tang and his brother, prompting Tang to question the protagonist's background. Shortly after, Yun-song, perched atop a nearby building, inquired about the identity of the individual with the Celestial Ascension Order. The observer identified the protagonist as Yifan, explaining that they had tested him with a spirit measuring tablet, revealing his qualification at the lowest yellow rank level. The observer suggested that Yifan was merely a wealthy youth fortunate enough to possess the Celestial Ascension Order. Yun-song deliberated on what to do with Yifan, noting that the minimum requirement for an outer disciple of the Sacred Land included a level 5 physical body and status in the marrow cleansing realm, criteria Yifan did not meet, being in the blood transfusion realm with the lowest yellow rank qualification. Nevertheless, due to the Celestial Ascension Order, Yun-song decided to grant Yifan an opportunity to prove himself. Later, aboard a giant bird, Yifan and the other participants were transported to another location. Reflecting on his journey, the protagonist marveled at barely meeting the qualifications for becoming an outer disciple. Despite his origins from Earth, Yifan's qualification remained at the yellow rank. Despite having surpassed several realms in strength, Yifan chose not to dwell on it, finding the qualification assessment inexplicable. Resigned to his lower rankings, he resolved to sustain himself with Earth's abundant resources and streamline his learning of techniques to accelerate his progress. Meanwhile, aboard the flying bird racing through the skies, they swiftly reached the Five Elements Sacred Land. Yifan marveled at the sight of the sacred land floating among the clouds. Suddenly, Yun-song clarified that this was the Five Elements Sacred Palace, the heart of the sacred land, accessible only to inner sect elders and true disciples without special permission. Inside the palace, everyone would commence their cultivation journey. Upon arrival, they lined up to hear Yun-song's address. He declared them all outer disciples of the Five Elements Sacred Land, emphasizing that their conduct must align with sect rules and prioritize the sect's interests in all endeavors. Yun-song distributed jade identity plaques and maps to their respective rooms, each containing a sect manual for study. He urged everyone to familiarize themselves with the rules and guidelines. Each disciple affirmed their commitment to the elder's instructions. Later, in the disciple's resting area, Yifan relaxed in his assigned quarters. In his quarters, Yifan discovered 3 talismans, a body purification talisman, one for quick movement, and another for water collection. Alongside them were spiritual stones and high-level healing pills. He marveled at the generosity of the Sacred Land sect. The combined value of these items easily surpassed 10 million gold. Becoming an outer disciple had brought him these riches without exception. Delving into the sect manual, Yifan learned about the ancient Great Hope continent, which was divided into 5 regions: Eastern River, Southern Desert, Western Sea, Northern Plains, and Central Plains. These lands were inhabited by 3 races: humans, demons, and monsters, knowledge Yifan was already familiar with. The human race's 10 sacred lands were named as follows: Immortal Sacred Land, Supreme Imperial Sacred Land, Five Elements Sacred Land, Great Ice Sacred Land, Martial Truth Sacred Land, Heavenly Slayer Sacred Land, Celestial Scripture Sacred Land, Great Treasures Sacred Land, Purple Phoenix Sacred Land, and Ethereal Sacred Land. Among these, the Ethereal Sacred Land stood out as the most mysterious, known for admitting only 5 disciples, each a world-renowned talent. Occupying the continent's central region, the Supreme Imperial Sacred Land boasted the strongest heritage and power, displaying dominance across the land. Other sacred lands such as Martial Truth focused on body refinement, while Heavenly Slayer specialized in sword cultivation. The Great Ice Sacred Land exclusively accepted female disciples, contrasting with the Five Elements Sacred Land, which was the youngest among the 10 and divided into factions: gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Upon discovering that the Supreme Imperial Sacred Land was the strongest among the sacred lands, the protagonist lamented not knowing this earlier, regretting that he hadn't found a way to join its ranks. Reflecting, he acknowledged that even with endless wealth to hire bodyguards, true strength was the only defense against those who would covet his possessions. He resolved to strengthen himself independently to forge his path to greatness. Yifan recalled the realms of bone forging, internal strength, and blood transfusion, which all focused on body cultivation. However, the marrow cleansing realm stood out for purifying the body of impurities and refining the purity of chi and blood. Determined, the protagonist sought ways to cleanse his marrow, purify his body, and enhance the purity of his vital energy and blood. Curious if Earth had anything to offer, he spent a month traveling between worlds. During this time, he discovered that using spiritual medicine in a medicinal bath proved more effective and stable than consuming it directly. Ingredients like Angelica sinensis, lotus seed, asparagus, and barley, recommended by the traditional medicine hall, helped purify body heat and detoxify toxins. As a result, Yifan felt lighter, stronger, and mentally sharper. With relentless cultivation, he sensed himself breaking through the constraints of the blood transfusion realm. His efforts intensified until he achieved the marrow cleansing realm, accompanied by a stylish cloak, the Cloak of Blood and Chi. Comparing it to the City Lord's cloak, Yifan recognized its brightness, density, and strength, akin to a chi and blood cloak of someone in the illumination realm. Energized by his newfound strength, Yifan decided to test its extent. He threw a punch into the air, and the sheer pressure from the blow toppled several trees. Astonished, he realized that not only was the Cloak of Blood and Chi formidable, but his punch alone carried an estimated force of 20,000 to 30,000 kilograms, double the strength expected of someone in the marrow cleansing realm. Motivated by this revelation, Yifan resolved to continue cultivating with even greater fervor. Sometime later, all the disciples gathered in the Sect Affairs Hall of the Five Elements Sacred Land. This hall served as the administrative hub where disciples managed sect affairs, received allowances, and undertook missions. Here, disciples could voluntarily take on missions ranging from small tasks to major undertakings, earning resources for their cultivation in exchange for contribution points. Contribution points were displayed on each disciple's jade identity plaque, with every new disciple starting with 50 points. The most coveted use of these points was exchanging them for martial techniques at the Martial Arts Pavilion, a repository rumored to house dozens to thousands of manuals. Acquiring one of these manuals could exponentially enhance a practitioner's strength in their chosen art. According to the Ancient Hope Manual, contribution points could be earned through 3 tiers of missions. Low-level missions were tailored for disciples in the marrow cleansing realm, offering rewards ranging from 100 to 300 contribution points. Intermediate-level missions, suitable for those in the illumination realm, promised rewards of 300 to 1,000 contribution points. High-level missions were reserved for disciples in the divine body realm, offering rewards ranging from 1,000 to 1,500 contribution points. Another method to earn points was by presenting divine treasures directly to the sect. However, the most lucrative but perilous option was capturing and eliminating criminals listed on the Five Elements Sacred Lands wanted list. This method not only yielded the highest points, but was also the quickest. Yet, those who made it onto this list were notorious and dangerous individuals within the Sacred Land. Each year, a few daring disciples attempted to apprehend them on their own, but none returned. Reflecting on the risks and relatively low rewards offered by the sect, Yifan deemed killing criminals too hazardous. Preferring a safer approach, Yifan saw presenting divine treasures to the sect as the most reliable method. It suited him perfectly. However, he acknowledged that unlike Liyun City, the Five Elements Sacred Land was not a place where wealth and power mixed freely. Frequent presentations of divine treasures might attract unwanted attention from treasure hunters. Although Yifan was unafraid of trouble, to avoid unnecessary complications, he opted to disguise himself, undertake sect missions, and opportunistically collect divine treasures along the way. Seeking to start, Yifan approached an elder for a low-level mission. Soon after, while disciples were leisurely strolling in the courtyard, they encountered a bully demanding their spiritual stones. Accompanying the bully were Ting and two others, with Tang praising the bully's wisdom and introducing him as Gao. The prince suggested that by blocking the way on allowance day, they could effortlessly acquire the spiritual stones. Gao, however, expressed confusion at Tang's words, claiming that everyone willingly handed over their stones out of admiration for him. Approaching a trembling disciple, the bully Gao questioned if the others agreed with Ting's claim. Fearfully, the disciple affirmed, asking if they could leave as it was getting late. Gao, however, lashed out and asserted his dominance, declaring he decided when they could leave. Concerned disciples checked on the frightened individual while Tang suddenly noticed someone approaching. The protagonist, Yifan. Displeased by Yifan's presence, Gao asked if Ting knew him. Tang stepped forward, recounting how Yifan had humiliated him a few days prior during their journey on the cloud boat. Although unsure of Yifan's background, Tang had discovered that he was extraordinarily wealthy. He had meticulously investigated, learning that Yifan was the only blood transfusion realm cultivator allowed into the sacred lands using the Celestial Ascension Order on Selection Day. Understanding the implications of owning such an expensive item, Gao deduced Yifan must possess many valuable belongings. Meanwhile, Yifan pondered that displaying a valuable treasure could make him a target for those with ill intentions. Recognizing his current strength was insufficient, he resolved that a weak man should never reveal all his cards at once and should trust no one easily. Suddenly, Gao approached Yifan and requested something from him. When asked what he needed, Gao leaned in and demanded Yifan's spiritual stones. Concerned disciples whispered that trouble was brewing. Gao was notorious for picking fights with weaker disciples, and few could evade his fists. Advised by onlookers to hand over his spiritual stones and avoid trouble with Gao, the protagonist smiled confidently. He calmly stated that if Gao wanted his stones, he would have to kneel and beg. This bold declaration shocked everyone present. Enraged, the bully lunged at the protagonist, but Yifan effortlessly dodged his attack. Confusion spread among the disciples as they marveled at Yifan's speed and Tang. Realizing Yifan had evaded a peak marrow-cleansing realm cultivator like Gao, acknowledged the protagonist's unexpected strength. Gao, fuming with anger, demanded if Yifan dared to repeat his challenge. Unfazed, Yifan questioned why he wouldn't dare, proposing that for every time Gao knelt, he would receive a spiritual stone, with an extra stone for every 10 kneels. He then provocatively asked Gao how many times he was willing to kneel. Infuriated, Gao lunged forward again. But before he could strike, someone intervened, threatening to report them to the elders if they didn't cease their quarrel. The mediator was Lu. Approaching Yifan, Lu questioned why he was there and if he had deceived him. Yifan calmly reminded Lu that he never asked about his destination during their boat journey. Interrupting their exchange, Gao shouted at Yifan to stop ignoring him. Yifan pushed aside the big guy, promising to address him later. Raising his hand, Yifan admitted he had momentarily forgotten about Gao. Grabbing Gao by the neck, he warned of breaking his face if he continued his disruptive behavior. Struggling to speak, Gao found himself at Yifan's mercy. Tang, astonished by the scene unfolding, listened as Yifan admonished Gao for his lack of virtue as a martial artist, particularly for attacking unexpectedly from behind. The other disciples stood in disbelief as Gao found himself overpowered by the newcomer. Lu attempted to intervene, but Yifan's grip was firm, and Gao was left foaming at the mouth. Expressing disappointment, Yifan mentioned he had intended to resolve things amicably and offer Gao the spiritual stones. With Gao incapacitated, Yifan proposed an alternative. If Gao could apologize sincerely, Yifan would forgive him. Yet, seeing Gao's condition, Yifan doubted his ability to uphold any semblance of honor. Instead, he decided on a different approach. Curious, Gao asked what Yifan intended to do next. Struggling to speak, Gao remained unable to open his mouth. Yifan queried if Gao was too embarrassed to apologize, suggesting in that case, he would accept the spiritual stones as thanks for Gao's generosity. With a decisive throw, Yifan sent Gao tumbling away, unconscious upon hitting the ground. Concerned colleagues rushed to his aid, questioning his well-being. Yifan then handed several bags of spiritual stones to two individuals, instructing them to return them to their rightful owners. Grateful, They inquired if Yifan wanted to keep any stones for himself. Yifan declined, stating there were still 3 troublemakers he had yet to deal with. Shortly after, the trio of troublemakers found themselves kneeling before Yifan, offering their possessions in repentance. Yifan directed them to leave the stones on the ground and depart. As they rolled away, one jested about their rolling posture, to which Yifan casually remarked it wasn't bad. Observing from a distance, Tang remarked that Yifan would eventually receive his due respect. It was only a matter of time. Feeling a presence behind him, the protagonist turned but found nothing there. Lu approached him, expressing admiration for his strength and admitting his earlier misjudgment aboard the cloud boat. He felt ashamed for promising protection to someone so capable. The protagonist assured Lu that he hadn't harmed Gao. Concerned, Lu asked if the protagonist feared Gao returning with others for revenge. With a calm demeanor, the protagonist remarked that someone like Gao, who relied on bullying, would likely keep his defeat to himself. Revealing his loss to a newcomer would only further tarnish his honor. Assertively, the protagonist declared that if Gao attempted any future tricks, he, Bai Yifan, would meet them with decisive force. Impressed by his resolve, Lu changed the subject, informing the protagonist of a mission involving himself and 3 comrades, still needing 1 more member. Curious, the protagonist inquired about the mission's nature. Lu explained it was a low-level mission focused on apprehending Yang Shizong, a suspected traitor collaborating with the demon race on the southern border of the Wei Kingdom. Yang Shizong was accused of treason, using innocent people's blood for martial arts practices. This mission promised a decent reward of 60 contribution points each upon successful capture and evidence gathering. Pleased with the offer, the protagonist agreed it was a favorable deal for a low-level mission yielding 300 points in total. Lu then introduced the protagonist to the other team members. Inside were senior brothers Lu, Zhang, and Shun, familiar faces who often crossed paths during the week. Lu introduced Yifan to them, mentioning he had met him on the boat and now resided on Mount Kachu. Yifan greeted them all cordially, but Zhang reacted with skepticism, commenting to Lu that he had hoped for a better addition than this newcomer. Yifan felt a pang of irritation at Zhang's dismissive tone. Zhang continued, pointing out that Yifan, exempt from the exam due to the Celestial Ascension Order, only held a low-level yellow rank. He questioned Lu's judgment, insinuating that bringing Yifan could undermine their sect's interests and accusing Lu of sabotage. Lu defended his decision, acknowledging Yifan's modest realm but emphasizing the strength he had witnessed firsthand, which Lu believed wouldn't hinder their mission. Yifan approached Zhang calmly and remarked on his apparent experience, asking if Zhang was well-read. Zhang, misunderstanding, demanded clarification. Yifan quipped that those who spoke carelessly about easily memorized knowledge might end up with more than they bargained for. Zhang, incensed, prompted efforts from others to diffuse the tension, reminding them of the limited time and importance of unity at such a critical juncture. Shin interjected, asserting that their assembled team, regardless of individual strengths, was sufficient. Expressing frustration, Zhang announced his departure, expressing concern over potential blame for the discord. He disparagingly remarked that even the gluttonous Toddy lineage couldn't produce a worthwhile addition. He urged everyone to prepare for departure, leaving Lu visibly annoyed. Curious, Yifan asked what gluttonous meant. Shun elaborated on Lu's Toddy lineage, stemming from the ancient fierce beast Toddy. Those with this lineage required copious amounts of food to fuel their cultivation. The potency of the spiritual energy within their diet directly influenced their cultivation speed. However, this advantage came with the drawback of immense resource consumption compared to peers. Lu acknowledged the practicality of the sacred land elders, who preferred distributing resources among many cultivators rather than focusing heavily on one. Shin jokingly interrupted Zhang to keep him quiet, while Lu, though slightly embarrassed by the topic, appreciated the opportunity as an outer disciple. He pledged diligence in earning his own cultivation resources, emphasizing that Zhang and Shun would stand by him regardless of his cultivation progress. Lu's remarks prompted a mild rebuke from Shun for speaking too freely. Meanwhile, the protagonist pondered Lu's resource needs, contrasting them with his own abundant supplies from Earth. Yifan contemplated the potential to elevate Lu's cultivation significantly, yet hesitated due to their developing friendship and the complexities of explaining his vast resources. Lu, noted for his sense of justice and worthiness as a friend, had earned the protagonist's respect, yet Yifan remained cautious, observing him a while longer. Later, at the border of the Wei Kingdom, the group gathered around a portrait of Shizong, the target of their mission. Intelligence indicated Shizong was in the intermediate realm of marrow cleansing, with 4 commanders under him who were at the peak of the blood transfusion realm. The most daunting challenge was Shizong's ability to mobilize 300,000 elite soldiers. Lu expressed disbelief at the scale of Shizong's forces. Yifan realized that even defeating the four commanders would be difficult with a direct approach, let alone facing such a vast army. He suggested stealth as the only viable strategy. Zhang concurred, adding that intelligence suggested Shizong was collaborating with the demon race, using captured civilians to cultivate forbidden blood arts. The severity of Shizong's crimes meant they needed concrete evidence to avoid a potential revolt. Zhang emphasized the importance of capturing Shizong alive for interrogation, but acknowledged that if conclusive evidence couldn't be obtained, they would have to bring back his body. Positioned discreetly near Shizong's mansion, the protagonist's group prepared to execute their mission covertly. Zhang instructed everyone to activate their chi concealment talismans, rendering them practically invisible as they swiftly bypassed the guards outside. Inside the city, their next task was to locate the old man, Shizong. Shen soon spotted him returning home, accompanied by a conversation with a woman about his military duties. As night fell, the woman expressed loneliness, mentioning she wouldn't feel as isolated if the silly one were present. Shizong comforted her and left for another location. The group cautiously followed, concerned they might have been detected, but Shizong continued without suspicion. He entered another house and manipulated a vase, revealing a hidden passage to an underground palace within the mansion. Impressed by the hidden mechanism, Zhang suggested they wait until Shizong entered before proceeding with their plan. After he disappeared into the underground palace, Shen inquired about their next move, asking if they should follow Shizong further. Zhang takes the lead and instructs everyone to enter the secret room. As they descend the stairs, they find themselves in a vast, dimly lit hall. Yifan urges the group to stay close and remain vigilant. The protagonist is immediately struck by a pungent smell. Zhang, recognizing it instantly, identifies it as the scent of blood, confirming their suspicions. This old man is truly practicing the demonic blood art, Zhang murmurs. Suddenly, Shen spots something in the shadows. Her eyes widen as she sees several pools of blood and scattered bones. She shudders at the thought of how many lives this old man has taken. The air is thick with demonic energy, and it's clear that the old man is refining the bodies for his dark rituals. We'll surround him, Zhang instructs. Wait for my signal, then we attack simultaneously. But before they can act, the old man's voice booms through the hall. Now that you're here, there's no need to hide, he shouts. In an instant, he unleashes a lightning bolt towards the group. They barely manage to dodge in time. How did he detect us? Zhang exclaims. With a sneer, the old man, Shizong, replies, You brats think you can sneak into my mansion undetected? Are you looking for death? Man, that was a total trap. The old guy tricked them into going down there, and then bam, the door slams shut. He starts yelling about how everyone is going to be his sacrifice. Zhang and Lu charge ahead, and Shan and Lu want to join in, but our protagonist tells them to hang back for a sec. All of a sudden, the demons break free and attack the group. Zhang is freaking out because these demons are crazy fast. The protagonist pulls Shun and Lu out of the way, making the demons miss their attack. He quickly realizes these aren't just regular bodies. They're the bodies of demon kings. Lu gets hit in the chest but tries to stay alert, while Zhang is fighting like his life depends on it, which it does. Everyone is facing off now. Shin checks on Lu, who says he can hang in there a bit longer. Zhang yells at the old man, promising he's going to die for what he's done. Yifan figures out that these demons are actually demonic puppets, made from people who died and are now being controlled with some evil magic. These demonic puppets are super creepy. They use the bodies of living people as sacrifices and keep all their memories and powers, getting even stronger through cultivation. There are 4 of these puppets, plus the old man, and a super strong puppet still tied up. Things are looking rough for our protagonist. The old man orders the demons to kill everyone, and the fight kicks off again. Zhang slices a demon's neck and thinks he's won, but the old man laughs and uses magic to heal it instantly. Everyone's totally floored by what just happened. Lu's like, we can't keep burning through our energy like this. Zhang tells the crew to hold off the puppets while he goes after the old man. He pulls out a talisman, saying that if he takes down the old guy, the puppets will stop. A powerful sword bursts out of the talisman and flies straight for the old man. But Shizong just grabs the sword with his hand, asking if Zhang's the top cultivator among them. He throws the sword back and says Zhang needs to eat a lot more beans if he wants to fight him. The sword smacks Zhang right in the forehead, and he realizes their intel was way off. The old man's in the realm of enlightenment. Lu is freaking out, thinking if Zhang, their strongest fighter, is struggling, they're all doomed. Shizong orders the demons to throw everyone into the blood pools. The group's thinking they're done for. But then, Yifan uses his floating flower steps and reaches Shizong. Our protagonist makes a swift move and slices off the old man's arm. Zhang's totally confused about what just happened. Shizong screams in pain but bounces back, yelling that he's going to kill the protagonist. But then the protagonist busts out another move, the violent rain sword technique, second form, Storm. The old man recognizes it and tries to throw up a blood shield, but it doesn't help. Every strike hits him perfectly. All the puppets suddenly stop moving, and the old man is left beaten and unable to fight. The protagonist tells him to give up because there's no way he's winning this. The fat man is stunned, and Shan is super impressed by the protagonist's power. Shizong's shaking all over, totally in shock that Yifan managed to hurt him with just a yellow-ranked sword technique. He thinks to himself, this is what you'd expect from a sacred land disciple. But then the old man snaps. He starts ranting about how everyone's destined to die today. Yifan's on high alert as the growth puppet gets unleashed. The group sees the protagonist in serious danger and can't believe Shizong managed to refine a puppet at the peak of the Enlightenment realm. Yifan yells for everyone to get out, and they barely dodge at the last second. The growth puppet is foaming with rage. They hide behind a pillar, and Lu tries to wake the old man, but he's already dead. The growth puppet's losing control fast. Yifan shouts that it's coming, realizing the puppet's striking randomly, following just the sound. He tells everyone to hide and stay quiet. They hide again, and Shin asks Zhang what they should do now. Zhang says they should escape because they can't take down the growth puppet on their own. But the protagonist disagrees, saying fleeing isn't an option. If they leave the puppet free, it'll result in the deaths of hundreds of innocent people. They need to end this now. Zhang gets angry and tells Yifan to shut up, insisting that they should leave quickly and call for reinforcements. Lu stands by Yifan, saying he's not going alone. Lu's going with him. Zhang asks what Lu means by that. Lu points out that they need to think carefully about whether they can really escape and how long it would take for reinforcements to arrive. The fastest backup could get there is about an hour, and by then, the growth puppet would have wiped out everyone within hundreds of miles. Lu stands tall and says he's not afraid to die. He'd rather fight this demon than let innocent people die to save himself. Shun and Lu are on board, ready to fight too. Zhang argues that it's just a death wish. The protagonist gets frustrated and asks how they can protect their nation and families if they run away in a crisis. If they won't risk their lives, they can't do anything for their country or loved ones. He explains that the world is safe because people know they might die but still do their duty. That's why there's peace. Zhang, irritated, shouts, asking who's supposed to be in charge. This commotion catches the growth puppet's attention and it charges at them. Lu draws his sword, ready to fight. But the protagonist steps up with his floating flower steps. Zhang yells that the demons in the realm of enlightenment and Yifan won't even scratch it. But the protagonist is serious and puts on his thundercloud ring. He releases a lightning bolt at the puppet and asks, "Who's the idiot now?" The bolt hits the puppet square in the chest, sending it flying. With just one strike, the protagonist defeats the growth puppet in the realm of enlightenment. The group is blown away by his power. The protagonist declares that only he decides whether he can harm his opponent or not. The puppet starts crying and calling for the general and Susu, saying it has no regrets. The protagonist notices that the demon still has some humanity left. He knows that demonic puppets usually have their humanity erased to make them easier to control, so seeing one with humanity still intact and obedient to its master means the person probably chose to become a puppet. The protagonist is puzzled by this. Lu is stunned that the puppet was really destroyed, while Zhang, from the back, insists it's impossible. He notices the protagonist used a magic weapon and asks where he got it, but the protagonist says it's one of his trump cards, so he kept it a secret. The protagonist goes near the pool and notices something off about the blood. Shin asks what's wrong, and Yifan says the blood doesn't seem human but beast blood. Lu mentions the intel said Shizong is a demon and wonders how he could use beast blood. Suddenly, the palace starts collapsing. The protagonist shouts for everyone to get out as fast as possible. A pillar falls towards the group, but suddenly a barrier protects them. Lu asks who's doing that, and a woman named Xiao Chai appears, saying she's glad she wasn't too late. She asks if everyone's okay. Lu recognizes her and is happy to see her. Yifan asks if she's using spiritual energy. Xiao Chai remarks that it's a miracle they're still alive after facing a demon puppet at the peak of the Enlightenment realm. She adds that she'll put in a good word for them, which will make them famous for a while. Suddenly, another pillar starts to fall towards her, but she snaps her fingers and evaporates it entirely. Even the protagonist is impressed by Xiao Chai. As she approaches, everyone thanks her for saving them. She goes up to the protagonist and asks if he's Yifan. She comments that it's impressive he managed to kill the growth puppet despite being only at the mid-stage of the marrow-cleansing realm. The protagonist humbly says he was just lucky. She smiles and mentions she heard everything he said, noting it's rare for an outer disciple to have such great understanding. Meanwhile, Zhang thinks the protagonist won because of his powerful magic weapon. He rummages through the old man's body and finds a rare magical storage ring. Just as he finds it, Xiao Chai takes the ring from him, saying it was the old man's best treasure, and praises Zhang for his sharp eye. She tosses the ring to the protagonist, saying that since Yifan killed the general, the old man's treasures belong to him. Yifan is thrilled and thanks her, knowing that a magical storage treasure is priceless in the outside world. He thinks it'll be perfect for when he returns to the contribution hall to give divine treasures and herbs from the earth. Zhang is fuming with anger at the protagonist. Xiao Chai then says the general was quite pitiful. His family had been loyal for generations, guarding the borders for the Wei royal family and protecting the people. He was a rare and good general. His only daughter, Susu, fell in love with one of the commanders under the old man's command, but was forced by the king of Wei to marry for peace with the barbarians. As a result, Susu was tortured to death, and her father sought revenge by working with demons to create a puppet for attacking the Wei royal family. The group recalls Lady Yang mentioning that if Susu were there, she might not feel so lonely. Lu now understands the significance of her words. Xiao Chai points out that the scars on the old man's body are from battles he led with his soldiers. The protagonist recalls the demon puppet saying it had no regrets. He then realizes the puppet was actually the commander Susu loved. Zhang starts kicking Shizong, saying the old man doesn't deserve sympathy. He feels it was a waste coming there for nothing. Seeing this, the protagonist kicks a stone that hits Zhang's leg hard. Zhang asks what Yifan's doing. The protagonist explains Shizong is already dead, and they shouldn't take out their anger on him. Zhang asks what they'll do with the body. Yifan says he'll take it to Lady Yang and explain everything. Zhang insists they need to cut off the old man's head for the mission's sake. The protagonist turns and firmly states he'll only say this once. The body must stay intact for Lady Yang. And with that, we conclude this chapter. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button. Let's aim for 200 likes on this video. Drop a comment below, say part 5, if you're excited for the next installment. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.